Welcome back. We're so excited that you're here. Guess what? Today is 200 episodes that we have been coming to you with the Lindsay and Tony podcast. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging in everything that we've done with these podcast episodes. We're so grateful that you're a part of this process. It's been an interesting journey with so much that we've talked about, right?
Yeah, and most of you we've never met in person or talked to, right? Maybe engaged in the post or something like that. And then a few of you became clients of ours over the last 5 years now. In 2018 in January, we started the podcast.
Yeah. So we've either worked with you, Tony's worked with you coaching, or you've been a student of my Mediumship mentoring, or you've met us at the retreat, and we're just so thankful, and we can't wait to meet the rest of you. I know we always get these messages from people saying, I've been listening to your podcast for this amount of years. I just wanted to say hi, or I wanted to tell you thank you for this. And those are the messages that keep us going, because there's a lot of work that goes into all these episodes, and we've learned a lot. Today, we are going to bring you an episode, brand new one, an important one, and this is all about making intuitive decisions in mediumship and also in your life, and it gives you that extra leverage, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, when you're using your instinct to make decisions, it's way drastically different than the opposite, right? How many times have you went to go make a decision and you would drag it on for weeks, for months, and the longer that you would drag it on, the more that you would think about it, the more confused that you got. I'll raise my hand. I've been there several times, and I realize that this way of thinking does not work. It's like when we're in those, we'll call them lower frequency states of mind, that's when we start to get confused, when we're trying to solve everything with our brain.
Oh yeah, when you're in the analytical side, everything's slower. But when you're thinking off of pure intuition, it's really, really quick. The big mistake I think people make is they get that intuitive nudge, and that's the feeling of passion and their heart guiding them to something. And then all of a sudden, their analytical brain gets in the way, and they start second guess what they just got intuitively, because it's so quick that sometimes it feels really, really subtle when you get intuitive information.
Yeah, and many times it does not make sense. Like the intuitive decision is like when you start to analyze it and you're like, look at logic, you put it on paper, you're like, this does not make sense. Like one example is me talking with Lindsay over the phone.
Right.
And intuitively I knew that I was going to be with her for the rest of my life and marry her. Right? That shit does not make sense. And I wouldn't tell my kids, hey, yeah, if you just talk to somebody on the phone, you could know that you're going to marry them, right? Right? Of course, we'll teach them about instinct and all that, but the point is a lot of times these intuitive decisions, you go to professional, it could come up, right? Like we always talk about investing in yourself. If you're a psychic medium or coach, like you must be investing in yourself, right? Personal development. Well, sometimes it'll be like we've done it before. We're like, oh wow, it's that much for this program. We're like, our instinct is telling us to do it, but logically, do we want to spend that much right now? We learn to go with our instinct.
Just make the quick decision.
And every time you look back and you do that, think about that.
It always comes back.
When you look back and you've trusted that instinct and it felt right, right? It always comes back. The money comes back. The logic starts to make more sense. Like as time went on with me and Lindsay, it made more sense why I felt that intuitive feeling in that moment on the phone call 1,100 miles away.
Right. And this is really common. It's like so most likely you're listening to this, you are a psychic medium. You are a healer. You're very intuitive. You're good with your clients. You give great readings. You bring some evidence in, you're connecting in for them. But when it comes to yourself, you're not doing that. You're getting the intuitive sense, but you're not taking action on it. And the longer that you wait after you get an intuitive nudge, the harder it is to follow that intuitive nudge. So I just want to repeat that. The longer that you wait after you get the intuitive nudge to take the action, it's going to be even harder. You're going to make excuses. You're going to put it off. You're going to ask a million people questions. You're going to go on Google and say, what does this mean when I feel this, or when I get this dream that comes up? It's like, It's instead of looking outwardly for the answer, once you get the intuitive nudge the first time, think, okay, what's my next step to get there? What is the fastest way to get there?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why it's important to make those quick decisions because
Yeah.
that energy that comes from the universe, from God, comes into you. It's an idea, it's fresh, it has a lot of power in that moment.
Right.
The universe loves speed. And the longer you take to make that decision, that idea starts to lose its power, starts to lose its power. You could always build it back up over time, but
Right.
why do that when you could just take advantage of the momentum? The universe loves speed. Always remember that. So when that intuitive decision comes in, make it, practice it over and over with small things. Like when you're in a coffee shop,
Yeah.
you know, some of us have a tough time just picking off the menu. It's like, make a decision. All right, I want that, I want this, I want that, whatever it is, from small to big, and the more that you do it, it's like a muscle. It's like any muscle you work out. It gets easier and easier, and you trust yourself more and more and more.
Yeah, and then when you, and I'm just going to scoot over here, and I don't mind doing this. We're on live, but that's all right. I'm putting on the light.
Oh.
So when you're making quick decisions, the first time you do it, it feels scary. You make the decision, you're like, oh, I want to retract that decision, and you start to kind of second guess it. But once you stick with it, you're like, that's why I made that. That's why I got that intuitive nudge. Then the more you do it, the easier it is for future things. Don't you notice that?
Yes.
That once we decided on one thing, we're like, okay, we trust it, and it builds up that belief in ourselves, and it builds up the confidence for future things.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can differentiate between the two.
You can, and that's the point of this, because looking back, you could think about the energies that you felt negative about. Like, oh, I don't want to go that way. That's your instinct telling you, or positive energy. So one of the negative energies we brought up on the podcast before is when we were buying our St. Louis house.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden we were about to buy this house. Is beautiful. We're about to close on it, literally. We went through all the paperwork. We're waiting for the last sheet to sign. And all of a sudden Lindsay had this energy inside of her where she was sick to her stomach. And I was like, what the hell? What do you mean? Like, this house is beautiful. What are you talking about?
He specifically
Logically, it
said,
didn't make sense because, like, the house looks beautiful and the location we wanted.
And you said it was like taking a candy
from a kid. Here you go. Here's all I pop. Let me take it back. But years later, it's been about 2.5 years or so since then, we look back and we realized why that energy was feeling that way. Well, it's a short-term rental in the neighborhood where we're at. And the house we ended up buying is grandfathered in, and you could actually do short-term rentals with that house. The house we would have bought, not so much. So there's always a reason why you're feeling why you feel, positive or negative.
Yeah, and I said my physical body, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you're upset right now. We can't do it. Like, there's no way we can do it because physically I feel sick to my stomach. And I know it wasn't a nervous feeling. It was a feeling of no. We are not doing this. And it was a beautiful home. On paper, it looked perfect. And Tony's like, you know what? He went on a walk and he's like, I feel like after thinking about it, if you're feeling that feeling, I'm just going to trust what's going to happen. And then right after, we actually put our, what did we do? We filled out something for a possibility of another place. And that was the perfect place that we ended up getting. And that was days after.
Yeah, and you made a good point too. You said, I realized that it wasn't me just being nervous. Because sometimes when you're going to make these big decisions, like buying a house, it's not like buying pizza. You could be nervous, and that could trick you. And that's the point of this episode, too, is like the more you get in tune with this, the more you make these quick decisions, the more you pay attention to these patterns, you start to see the distinctions between, oh, that's fear, nervous energy, intuition. It feels different.
It does, because I'm trying to think of, people ask this question all the time with us, like, how do you know the difference between fear and intuition? I feel like intuition, there's an excitement, there's a feeling of passion at the beginning. So if someone says, hey, do you want to go on this trip? And you're like, oh, I'm so excited. And then all of a sudden you start to get in your head, and then you call your mom or your dad or your friend, like, do you think this is a good idea to do right now? And then you retract, you change. So I think with the intuitive nudge, there's an excitement and a passion first, and it comes in so quick. When it comes to, and then you might get the fear of, oh my God, I'm kind of scared to fly, or if someone's scared to fly. But if you get asked a question and right from the beginning, you might even find your body starts to shake. I know that happens like with me. My physical body will tell me that something's off.
Yeah.
And I feel almost like a sick feeling, and not the feeling of excitement kind of feeling. It's like this feeling in my stomach, like, oh, I feel like I want to scrunch up, and I just can't even think about this right now. I feel so
Like indigestion.
I guess. I don't know if that's maybe for you. But yeah, for me, I feel this feeling of like, I get actually agitated thinking about making the decision.
Yeah, you pay attention to that pattern within you.
For me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
but someone else, it might be something different.
Yeah, it might be like a certain kind of bird flies by you or something, right? We all
Right.
we all develop our communication with the universe, with our bodies, right?
And I think the big thing is tracking those moments,
Yeah.
because that's what helped me over the years is I reflect on those moments. It might not make sense at that second, just like with that house situation, but years later, it even made more sense. But if you take a notebook out, write your date next to it, say this is my intuitive nudge, whether it's for the good or not so good feeling. I think the big misconception about these feelings is when you get intuitive nudges, it always has to be bad premonitions. That's not true. It's how you
No.
train your brain.
That's how you train your brain.
So you can easily train your brain to think, well, I'm excited about this, but it's not smart to make that decision right now. And maybe this is a sign because I'm not getting a sign and I'm searching
Yeah.
for it and a bird doesn't fly in front of me.
Yeah,
But if you're asking for a sign, that's your sign to do it.
yeah, because you're trying.
That's
you know.
your intuition saying, I want the sign to happen. You don't have
Yeah.
to wait for the sign. The sign's just an added bonus.
Right. So you make the decision, something in your business, and it's something that's out of your comfort zone. And after you make the decision, you're like, oh shit, who am I to do this?
Yeah.
Right? We could get caught, like, we're all intuitive here. That's our superpower. That's your superpower. But on the other end of that, it's a double-edged sword to where we could be very analytical too. And it could be a pattern. So I'll give you an example, like, Lindsay's asking me to do the retreat. This was back in 2018.
Oh, yeah. And the podcast.
The podcast, same thing. Like every little thing that I would go to level up, I'm like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet, right?
He's like, I'm not feeling called.
I'm not feeling called to that yet, and I'm on point with that, right? And I make the right decision. But even when I do make the decision, so I was like, all right, in 2018, Lindsay had already done one retreat, and I'm like, I'm gonna come in the second year, and I knew in my heart, like, I'm making this decision. It's time. I'm ready for it. I'm full-time in my business now. Let's do this. And then, of course, after you make that, now you got to deal with all these insecurities that come up inside your head that sometimes you could think is your intuition telling you, oh, maybe I was wrong in it. I'm not supposed to do this. That's why I'm getting that other. And we confuse our internal programming that we got from the people around us, from the world around us as a kid, as our intuition. But we pay attention to those patterns and we notice, right? And I noticed, thank God I noticed that time, because if I didn't, all that fear that's coming up that first year that I was going to do that retreat, I never would have went. And I would have talked myself out of it. And now, we are 5 years later, and I want to do retreats the rest of my life. So the cave that you fear to enter, that's where all the treasure is. You heard Bob Proctor say that before.
And it reminds me of this podcast. It's another big thing. You wouldn't be sitting here right now talking on the podcast.
Same thing. I wouldn't be here sharing our insights, our stories, our vulnerability. You go back to all of our podcast episodes, the other 199, you'll see we share some stories on there, right? It's vulnerability. Like we're the type of people we'd rather hide in a cave, literally.
Oh, definitely.
Away
Natural
from people.
introverted.
And most of you are like that too from what we hear as we have conversations with you. And it doesn't matter because you get to pick. If your game is retreats, if your game is doing readings, once you enter that court, right, you're somebody else. You're now the healer. You could be a person outside of that, but now you're the powerful healer, right? So it's making that distinction over time too, that you can be both, right? So when you make these intuitive decisions and then that internal insecurity starts to try to talk you out of it, just recognize it for what it is too.
And keep on moving. That's the trick with this. You wouldn't, if you're on a train, you wouldn't stop in the middle of the tracks on the way to your destination, right? You want to keep on going. So that's the biggest thing. Even if you move at a pace where there's moments where it comes up, you make the decision, you take the action, you keep on moving, don't regret. There might be some slow moments there.
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
when you make decisions, make quick decisions. And that means once you make the decision, you stick with it and you say, I made this decision. I'm going to go all in right now since I made the decision.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that actually separates different psychic mediums from the other is once they decide, they actually make it happen.
It's the absolute thing. It's what we notice with our clients that come through our 90-day business
Hi,
mastermind,
Tony.
mediumship mastery circle.
Yeah.
The clients that make the decisions quick and they keep the momentum going, the universe loves speed, and they keep the
Right.
momentum going and they keep going. Those are the ones, the psychic mediums that continue to level up with their skills, with their life. They continue to create more fulfillment, more abundance, right? More community, all of that. It's like when you make these decisions, because if not, you're stuck on one decision and you're going back and forth. Well, now
It's a lot of energy.
you're missing out on day after day of other decisions that would have came, other intuitions that would have came, that would have brought you up even higher, we'll say, right, on this ladder that never ends.
Right. And that's exactly what happens. It is like a domino effect. Once you make that one decision and you follow that intuitive nudge, you're going to have more opportunities come in. It's going to be an easy flow and easy frequency.
So if you want a little bit of homework to do after this podcast episode, practice today. When you go to a restaurant, be quick and make your decisions. Like you don't got to rush it and everything, but just like no, like, all right, I want that, I'm getting that, I'm going to try that. Or whatever it is, right? Like any little small decision you have today, just get quick with making them, right? Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
And we have Debbie over here.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Mom. She says, I usually do this. Why make it more confusing?
Yes.
I totally agree. Exactly.
Yeah, Debbie,
she does act
Debbie's
off of her
pretty quick
intuition.
with making decisions. All right, we're going here. Let's do this.
Sometimes she makes other people's decisions for them, too.
Yeah, she's quick.
So this is important, and I will say she is a good teacher with this. She's laughing about that. She's a great teacher. I think that's where
I love you, Debbie.
I think that's where I learned my decision-making skills, actually, partly from my mom.
Yeah, I would say you're both very intuitive.
But I
know.
wasn't always good with making decisions. I'd be like, oh, I'll deal with it later. I'll just go with the flow and not decide right now. So I think over time it built up with following that, and then it just builds a confidence too.
Yeah, definitely. And you can have different areas, right? Some areas you're really good at making decisions, other areas you're not. We'll go to areas that you're really good at making decisions and figure out what am I doing differently here, and then start applying it in those other areas. Like I'll give you an example. Like with you, when it comes to restaurant food, that's why I brought it up. I wasn't trying to talk about you, but it was like just an idea. Lindsay will be at the restaurant changing the whole fucking menu.
Well, sometimes I don't know what I'm craving in the moment.
Well, it's okay. It's okay.
No, I do when I change the menu, that means that I know what I want, but I want it a certain way.
True. No, that is true. But when it comes to business and when it comes to big decisions and a lot of other areas, Lindsay's like, boom, I know I want this, I want this, I want that.
When it comes to food, I'm thinking, okay, I should be eating healthy, but I want the pancake. So that's where I'm like,
yeah,
I should be doing this, but I know what I need to be
So that was another point too, is like, if you want to become more clear in making decisions, understand your why of what you're doing.
Right.
When you go deep in why on what you're doing, so if I give you an example, like psychic mediumship business, right? Like, why are you doing this, right? Go deeper, right? It's going to be a why that makes you cry. And when you're in tune with that, right? When you're in tune with that energy within inside you, and then you act from that space, decisions start to become easier because you have all these reasons why you're making it. So when you go to make that decision of running a retreat or doing something that's scary in your business to you, it's new to you, your head's not gonna talk you out of it because you're like, all right, my head's saying all of this, that you're not enough, but no, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for the younger version of me that was in all this pain because I had all this intangible energy coming to me. I didn't know how to process it. I want to help other people process it. I'm doing it for this, right? You have all these reasons.
I think that's the biggest thing is the why you're doing it. And sometimes you might have to be thinking about, okay, what makes more sense for me right now? And then when you make more sense for you, then it affects the external things too, right? And that passion inside, that's going to be the key indicator of where your intuition's taken you, without a doubt. So hopefully this makes sense to everyone. And if you have situations that have come up for you that you could think of that maybe you are going to take a class or, you want to sign up, it could be a retreat or whatever it is, and you were kind of scared, but you knew intuitively that you knew it was the right time for you, and you trusted it, how that outcome came. And then think about moments that you didn't trust it and you put it off and you thought, well, maybe I'll do that another time. Maybe the timing's not right for me, even though I want to do it. And you push it off, and how that affected you. Did you have regrets? Did you wish that you did do it, but you missed the opportunity? There's a lot of missed opportunities when you don't follow your intuition quickly.
Yeah,
it's about speed. It really is about speed and making that decision.
There is. And it reminds me of your Mediumship Mastery Circle, which that closes in the next couple of days. It only opens a couple times a year where people could come into it, right? It's a hell yes or hell no. That's how I make decisions too in business. Really with everything that I do, it's like, it's got to be a hell yes or hell no. Those of you that are on the fence of Mediumship Mastery Circle, is it a hell yes or is it a hell no? Because especially with something like this, it's sacred.
Yeah.
It must be a hell yes. If it's a hell no, if it's not a hell yes, then don't sign up. But if you're someone on the fence and you're like, wait, your internal calling's telling you like, no, take advantage of this opportunity.
Right.
Because the cart closes on
June 29th.
June 29th.
The other thing that I want to say to segue from that too, if you're someone that's like, oh, I don't know if a mediumship community is for me. I just did a whole workshop on this. We had over 100 people sign up. There was some tech stuff at the beginning. So I know a lot of you are going to be watching the replay, but so it took a little bit to get live. But once we got there, it was perfectly fine. So the recording is ready to go. If you sign up and you opt into that free class, that free online workshop, you'll see the replay come to your email right away. If for some reason you're not getting the replay, check your spam folder or your promotional folder and just message me if you don't see it. But that's up for the next 72 hours. So watch that first if you're trying to figure out, is a mediumship community for me? And every community is different. That's one thing I've heard is, oh, okay, it sounds like another circle. This is different. When you're in there, when you're with different people, you're going to experience different things. So I want you to really feel into your heart and really get that intuitive nudge. But if you're someone that's like, oh, I have to see if this is important to me, watch the free class and you'll have your decision there too. So anything else we have to add?
That's it for now.
But let's thank you again for being here for the 200th episode. And I want to hear from you. We both want to hear from you. If you've been with us all along, maybe even been with me when I started intuitive guidance with Lindsay Marino, share with us in the comments. I want to hear, how did you first hear about the podcast episode with us? Did you connect through Sedona Talk Radio when I was on Sedona Talk Radio doing the intuitive guidance show? How long have you known us for? Any favorite episodes that you've had? Share below. We love hearing from you guys. And we will see you guys next time.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Debbie.